So welcome everybody to the DSO Study Club. I'm Bill Neumann with Group Dentistry Now, and we are going to spend the next hour with Cassie Tallon and Sam Aponte, and we are going to talk about all things multi-practice marketing. And I am going to do a brief introduction, and then we're going to let these two ladies have a conversation about what they know best, which is marketing. So again, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate it. This will be recorded. So if you have to drop off, we hope you don't, because we like you being here live, and you can't ask any questions if you drop off. But if you drop off, there will be a recording. We'll have it tomorrow, and there will be also if we miss any of the Q&A. So if we don't get to all the questions that we have, we can follow up because we'll have your email addresses. So either Cassie or Sam will follow up with you. So without further ado, why don't we kind of take things away here? And again, we are here aligning multi-practice marketing from the C-suite to the front desk, and kind of take a look at the attendees today. Looks like we have a mix of everybody from the C-suite to the front desk, and some dentists and some operations and everything in between. So really a nice makeup of the size of the groups that we have, and then also the careers, the jobs that they do for these DSOs. So first off, we have Cassie Tallon, and Cassie is a marketing administrator for Partnerships for Dentists. So I'm going to let Cassie give you a little bit of her background and talk to you a little bit about who Partnerships for Dentists is.
Thanks, Bill. So right now I work with Partnerships for Dentists. Previous to that, I served with my dad, who was a dentist, and my mom, who's a hygienist, with a practice in Branson, Missouri for 5 years. And marketing has been my passion long before dentistry. And I remember coming on board and even saying to my dad, like, I am not into dentistry. That is not my thing. And fell in love with it, fell in love with the culture and everything that's tied to dental. Our practice was acquired by Partnerships for Dentists. Partnerships for Dentists brought me on to start helping with marketing, and I serve as the marketing administrator, providing marketing for 24 practices. And a key element of what we utilize in the success of our practices is RevenueWell. It's the very first thing that I sign on for our teams, and just create synergy in the way that we communicate. So I'm excited to share that, and excited to kind of grow with you and what we're learning to become better at what we do. So
Thanks, Cassie. Next up, we have Sam Aponte. She is the Enterprise Account Executive at RevenueWell, and a lot of you may know Sam. See her at just about every DSO meeting when we used to have live meetings. So I'm assuming we're going to see you again real soon. So Sam, can you tell folks a little bit about your background and then also RevenueWell?
Sure. Yeah. You probably see me at events, maybe your email inboxes or perhaps LinkedIn. But I've been with RevenueWell now for roughly 3 years come May. And the last 2 years, I've just immersed myself in the DSO group practice market just to learn a lot more about everybody's roles and how they function, and just learning more and more new things every day. So I'm really happy to be here and share a lot of what I've learned from Cassie and her growth with Partnership for Dentists.
Excellent. So like I said, we're going to get right into things, and I'm going to let Sam take it from here for a while. And then what I am going to do is I'm going to jump back in a little bit later on, and we're going to answer some of the questions. We had several questions sent to us ahead of time, which was wonderful. And then any questions, like I said, that you have while we're on the webinar, feel free to type them out in the Q&A. So Sam, you should be able to take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Bill. So just a little bit of quick background on RevenueWell. So we've been around since 2010, solely working with dental practices, and we now have over 8,000 dental practices to date. And our mission here is really just to build better, more connected relationships with patients and their communities. And obviously that's going to be a huge point today when we're talking about patient loyalty. So I'm really excited to discuss that. And I guess we'll go ahead and kind of discuss the need for marketing and why that's significant. Cassie, I'll hand that over to you.
thanks, Sam. So it's just exciting to share with you the areas of growth that we're seeing. I've been working with RevenueWell as my key go-to source for the last 6 years. And it was the reason why I started to see growth at Branson Dental Center first, what was initially because we decided to change the way we were handling confirmations, which was waiting for someone to call in and confirm, and if they didn't get confirmed, and moving into more of an automated system that still had a personal touch. So what we found is that the more we see this technology evolving in our culture, where people become very dependent on setting their own communication preferences and us speaking to them in a way that is best for them, RevenueWell achieves that for us. And so what we're seeing is, allowing the patient to set their preferences, such as phone, email, or text, ultimately gives them the power to set the customer experience up for what works for them. So that evolution is really all about customer experience. And I'm going to share a lot more about just scripting and ways that we're engaging with that. But for us, that key go-to source has been RevenueWell as the solution for our communication needs.
Thanks for sharing that, Cassie. So I guess one of the first things that I do want to touch on is what a lot of the conversations look like today. So it doesn't matter the size of the group. They could have as few as 3 locations. They could be upwards of over 100 locations. And a lot of the focus today seems to be around how to improve show rate, how to increase case acceptance, and even just how to implement really smooth workflows that are consistent across each office to make sure we are scaling qualitatively. So a lot of the discussions today around group practices and DSOs, I think, will really be valuable in terms of the content we'll be describing. So these are the 4 things we plan to touch on today. 1, how Cassie gets all of her practices excited and eager to wake up in the morning and get everything done. So really how to kickstart your day and your schedules. The second thing would be around consistency. How do we have, with confirmations, for example, although a patient scheduled, it doesn't mean they're scheduled, right? What does true patient conversion mean? And what does consistency look like? And then we'll kind of touch on, we'll go ahead and dig a little bit deeper and touch on how we can truly maximize that follow-up. Right? We have that new patient. How do we make sure that patient comes back in? How do we make sure we're actually increasing our reach and touching every single patient that we can, because we do care about their oral health? And then last but not least, Cassie's going to be describing a lot of the marketing campaigns that she sent out, the timing, why, and why it works. So again, it all kind of ties back to that patient experience, and it doesn't make a difference whether it's leadership to the front desk. All of these things kind of come together. So let's go ahead and kick it off with how to kickstart these schedules. So Cassie, how do you have your offices kind of wake up each morning and get everything done for the day?
Yeah, so really one of the first things that we started to transform as we were listening to huddles that were previously created is we wanted to move away from that whiteboard production for the day, collection for the day goals, and start kind of shifting our internal culture to be more geared towards patient care, and really out of that, empowering our team to have all of the right pieces of information before patients even walked in the door. And so I shared the fact with just a office leader the other day that, we're seeing people as a result of COVID switch brands, start changing what they're doing. And surveys are showing that really is a result of them not feeling connected to the brand that they're utilizing. They're not feeling cared for, and it doesn't align with their core values. And so from our perspective, if we can get the culture internally shifted around the patient, it does 2 things. It starts to build a loyal patient base, and 2, it ultimately changes the culture within your practice. I want people to come into work every day and feel excited about the care they're going to provide versus whether or not they're going to schedule 7 crowns. And ultimately, just to share this on the front end, that is the end result. You get those crowns, you get that extra production because you're focusing on the right things first. And so this list that's printable inside of RevenueWell, we took it a step further than maybe what RevenueWell intended, but you can print it on the appointment tab, and you can print your upcoming day. So here's the cool thing about this. When you print it, it gives you a space for check marks. And as you know, most of your girls at your front desk love that check mark, got it off the list kind of process. But what we do is we take this into our huddle, And we first start by talking about the new patients that are coming in for the day. So we run the same script every time we announce it. So we say, Joe's coming in today for his first visit. Joe's going to be in operatory 1 with Susie getting his teeth cleaned. Be sure to stop in there and say, welcome to Joe. Let's welcome him into the dental family. If you see him, he's a new patient. Secondly, we address the fact that there are patients coming in that have a birthday. It's another relational touch point. It's listed on your RevenueWell sheet that you print, and it's about making that connection point and getting your team excited about it. Like, how cool is it that I get to care for somebody that has a birthday tomorrow and tell them happy birthday? Again, it's about making that relational connection. And then in addition to that, we start to talk about finances in a little bit of a different way. And so I love that we have 30, 60, 90-day balances, because we're able to engage with the patient proactively and start to collect on that balance ahead of time. And also, this is just some scripting for you to see here, but also we make it all about the patient, right? We're not asking for them to pay their bill online or pay their bill when they're with us in a way that feels like it's uncomfortable or awkward. You know, often at our front desk, we have to have difficult conversations anyway. What we want to do is try to remove as much of that as possible to protect our culture. And so when we send out information around the patient scheduling, we send something a day before off of this checklist that just says, hey, you still have a balance left. We want to make it convenient for you. Here's a link into direct bill pay. I mentioned this to some of our office leaders, but I'm actually hearing feedback that the patients are saying thank you for sending me my link to pay. And I'm not sure the last time you actually heard someone say thank you for asking me to pay, but it's about the convenience, right? It's starting to build that level of trust with the patient that you're making it convenient for them. And the way you frame that, the way you present that to the patient engages them differently to pay their bill. And Sam, if the last point, if you can go back to that slide one more time, the one before this, this is one last piece that for me is the secret sauce of your ReCare, which is leveraging the patients already in the chair to see who else in the family is due for ReCare. And our girls up front use this for 2 reasons. One, they're able to take that visible family member that's due for ReCare and fill holes. So if they're looking for tomorrow and they already see mama is coming in, they will call and offer a time for her to bring in her child. The second thing is, when that parent is sitting in the chair, they are able to say with the hygienist, because it was shared during huddle, hey, we see that you've got 2 kiddos due for ReCare. We just wanted to know if you would like to schedule them while you're here. We just wanted to save you an extra call, and how can we accommodate you? And you would be shocked at the way that transforms things, because I'm sure someone at your front desk has called 3 days after they've had a patient in the chair to ask for the rest of the family to come into ReCare. And it disconnects, right? Because it doesn't feel like you're all about them. So the more you can add those personal touch points to make it feel like they're scheduling and booking ReCare accordingly, the more that you're going to get that buy-in. They're going to be like, yeah, you saved me a call, or having to wait till I had my calendar accessible because you called me while I was on the road. They're sitting there as an active, present audience, and there's no better time to talk to them about scheduling the rest of their family for ReCare.
Excellent. You shared a lot of information there, Cassie, relative to kickstarting schedules, right? So some of the things I was able to write down, you know, the first thing you mentioned is, you know, the first thing that they, when an office manager is coming to the practice, they're not thinking about those 7 crowns they want to get scheduled, right? So really talking about there's money versus motivation, right? And really focusing more on the motivation side of things, getting them eager to come in, eager to serve, and again, eager to really or express that they care about oral health, right? So, and then with the bill pay side of things, making sure that we're still at the convenience of the patient. We're being more relational. We're kind of pivoting towards the needs of the patient versus what works best for us, and really avoiding those awkward phone calls like, hey, Cassie, you owe us $250, by the way. You know what? Instead, hey, Cassie, notice you're coming in tomorrow. You still have this balance, right? Via text.
Yeah,
We
and the
take that off the
reality,
conversation.
yeah, and I was going to say the reality is nobody wants to call in and say I forgot to pay my bill. So we alleviate that by giving them the link to take care of it via text, and it just feels so much more comfortable. And that's oftentimes very missed in the practice because the patient comes in for general recare that's covered by insurance, and they walk out the door and they still had a $20 balance from 60 days ago that nobody thought of to collect. So it's really getting your whole team geared around that customer service. And at the same time, they're collecting. So it really is a huge win for everybody.
Excellent. And that kind of ties into our next topic here regarding confirmation consistency. So everybody's waking up in the morning, eager and excited with their task list. They know what they need to do for the day. Now let's kind of touch on more of that consistency piece within each office and basically improving show rate here.
Yeah, I think one of the key pieces in confirmations for us is not just doing a confirmation as you see a no-show rate increase, right? Like I'll have an office say, we've started confirming more now that we're seeing more no-shows. It's a consistency in the way that you do it and a commitment amongst the team that you literally have that like holy hour dedicated each day to where you're doing the physical phone call tied with the confirmations. But the starting point of that, Sam, is really just that first engagement, which is the digital appointment reminder. A lot of offices don't utilize it fully, but it really is the key to success in keeping patients on your schedule. So what we suggest is rather than telling your team to go ahead and let the patient go, like if they're not interested in scheduling, let them go, call in at a later date. We all know that's not going to happen. How many visits do you need to schedule that you still don't have on your appointment books? Probably a lot, right? Until somebody reminds you that you need to do it. So what we're saying is when the patient says to the team, I'm not sure if I'm ready to schedule yet 6 months out. Well, let's go ahead and secure you a time today. It can change and you can let us know at a later date. But then what we'd like to do is give you a digital appointment reminder that you can put on your calendar. And here's the really cool part of this. This for me is where the patient retention and loyalty starts. We ask the patient for their email address, and we don't ask it in a way that it's, hey, I need your email address, to which the patient replies, well, what do you need that for? Instead, we say, hey, Sue, we want to go ahead and send you a digital appointment reminder, which is awesome. You can actually put that on your schedule. There's a link for you to actually add it to your schedule. But if we can have your email address, it'll allow you to get that digital card because we're no longer doing a paper card as a result of COVID. We're trying to have more touch-free points within our practice. So number one, you've reduced your cost. And number two, you've immediately built this loyalty with the patient that they know they're coming in with 6 months. And we all know the closer it gets into that date of the appointment, life happens and there are so many other things being scheduled, but they constantly have the visibility of that appointment that we have put on their calendar. So by starting here, we set the standard that this is really where we want to have the patient engagement begin so that they feel like it's all about them and making sure that they have access to that on their calendar.
Excellent. And I'm glad you shared that piece. We're not just relying on the automatic kind of reminder side of things, but we're being proactive instead of reactive. When I first visited my dental office, some of the time, they just say, wave and say bye, thanks for coming. They don't actually proactively reach out. I had to tell them they needed to get a system. I was like, I wouldn't have come back here if I didn't work for RevenueWell. I wouldn't have known.
Yeah.
And then the other piece of it is actually that positioning and that messaging, right? Cassie, I need your email because I want to send you a ton of texts and emails. No, right. You know what? We care about you having we care about your oral health. Let's at least tentatively get you on that calendar. That way in 6 months, we don't miss the mark on anything. We're still making sure that you can attend this time. If not, we'll reschedule it. That way it's not out of sight, out of mind. So that positioning and that messaging is really compelling. And it seems like, your staff's trained across the board to do exactly that. So thank you for sharing that specifically. Yeah. So next topic that we're going to get to is maximizing follow-up. So, obviously we touched on scheduling, there's things like, recall, recare, kind of the whole nine. So tell us what maximizing follow-up truly means for you and how your offices are leveraging that today.
Yeah, I think that sometimes we, as practices, maybe are waiting for the phone to ring. We're waiting for those patients to come back because we put ourselves out there. We felt like we gave a good treatment plan presentation. We're waiting for that response. And I would challenge that and say those constant and consistent reminders that are set up in a way that feel very authentic and very engaging are what lead us to actually getting that patient back in the chair. So it's creating the accessibility of the information that they need to hear. I shared a story with you all or with another group that I was working with around the language that's being utilized. This is really an important piece for you to remember. I actually had an office leader after I shared it. She's like, we don't do that. I'm going to go talk to my doctor right now. She came back and shared like it's working. And so this is the tip. Have your doctors really analyze, are they saying during the conversation with the patient things that speak to the progression of what's happening inside their mouth? The patient's two thoughts that are always in their head are two things. One, how much money is it going to cost me? And how long is this going to take? So if you know that those are the two things, their schedule and their money, you start to change a little bit of your language around that. And I won't feel the need to use my money to pay for what's inside my mouth until you tell me that it's going to get worse. So it's more than just diagnosing and saying this is what's happening with the treatment. It's saying this is progressively going to get worse over time, and then allowing the patient to make active choices as a result of that. So I want to share more about just what that looks like in terms of those personal touch points. And so there's this tool inside of RevenueWell where you can actually modify your treatment plan follow-up. You can actually go in and change the way that you want your formula to show and showcase information. I love the video component of this because it's tied to Cassie Cloud. And so the videos are very educational and they're sharing with the patient information about what's going on inside their mouth. You also have the visibility once these go out to see if the patient read it. So here's the secret tip that you can write down of what we do to help our teams really thrive. And it's this: we take that list that RevenueWell is automatically sending to. So you go to the campaign that's automated, you click on the sent list, and you take that list of patients, and that becomes your call list. Because you can't sit back and wait for the patient to look at this email and then call your office. It's the personal touch point that follows this that for us has made a huge impact. And what I challenge you to do with your scripting is not have your team just cold call, right? Like nobody on the team wants to cold call. In fact, they've got lists in drawers that they're not calling on because nobody wants to be the bearer of bad news. Like you still haven't taken care of your crown. But every person on your team will want to call and schedule treatment if you change your language to this. Hey, Sally, I'm calling to follow up on the email that we sent you. Did you receive it? Pause. Because now your lead in to Sally is the email that you sent her, instead of leading in with, hey, I'm calling about the crown that you didn't take care of, which feels like scolding, and that we're ultimately telling the patient what they didn't do. So I love that lead in, and then follow up with, did you have any questions about the video or the information about that treatment? It now feels like you're caring for that patient and that you're actively pursuing whether or not they feel comfortable knowing the information that they do. After that pause, after that engagement, there's this huge win where the patient will open up to you if you allow it, for them to say, you know, I'm just not ready to schedule right now. Well, do you mind if I ask why? Well, I'm just not sure if I can do that. No problem. Let me go ahead and send you a link for financing if that's all right. You could apply for financing and then get back with us. They love that. They love the accessibility of us following up with something like a digital link for them to click in and apply for financing, all inside of RevenueWell, because now it's about accommodating their needs versus us just pushing our agenda, which is to fill our schedule.
Excellent. And that's a really good point. And I noticed, here we have, we know if the patients actually read that email, right? So when we do reach out to them, it's strategic, isn't it? We just sent you that email. I know you read it. hey, Cassie, did you happen to get that email? Fantastic. And it just leads to that warmer conversation. Just like you mentioned, we're not scolding, but instead we care about you. Did you get the information we sent? This is why this will worsen before it gets better. And that's great, kind of keeping that personal touch. And that's another thing we want to discuss here too is how do we kind of keep that personal touch even when they're not in-house, right? We talked about the task list to really perfect that and improve that. We talked about treatment plan follow-up here. And, even after that appointment, if you want to tell us a little bit more about how you have your practices, what happens when your patients do walk out?
Yeah, so a lot of office leaders don't turn on post-ops, and I would challenge you to turn on the post-op automated reminder. It comes and pulls off of the completed CDT codes that are on the ledger. So one of the greatest ways to utilize this is to book additional treatment. And everybody's like, well, I don't know if we need to do that. The doctor, we do follow-up calls for post-op. You're missing it. This is the key element. When a patient has an extraction, or let's just say you have a temporary bridge, or something that isn't a long-term solution inside the mouth, right? We want to give them the best patient experience of what's best for their mouth. So set up for your extractions a designated post-op that talks about the importance of an implant to protect from bone loss, and give them a direct link into RevenueWell or Care Credit. Into Care Credit or Wells Fargo or whatever your financing solution is, and make it accessible, because now you're not just following up to make sure they're good after their surgery, you're also engaging with the patient to give them the additional solutions they need to book. It's a great way to lead into further treatment down the road, because you're building the relationship with the patient and keeping it front of mind that they still have treatment that needs to be accomplished past an extraction or past a temporary bridge.
Yeah, and it truly expresses, a little bit more of the passion behind, serving that mission of oral health, right? We care about your health, and it's not just in-house that we do, right? We're sending out these personalized messages, even when we don't have the time in the office, right? We can leverage something automatic yet personal at the same time. And it sounds like your team's using it in a very strategic way that I hadn't imagined. So next topic that we have is last but not least, fueling growth with campaigns. So a lot of your marketing expertise and campaigns that you've sent out, you've seen a lot of success in. So tell us a little bit more about how you're accomplishing that today.
Yeah, so I can't recommend custom campaigns enough, and really starting to engineer something within your practices where they feel engaged with you. We send out a weekly pulse check where basically we check in with the practice and find out where they need support. We ask the team, like, are you struggling with doctor production? Are you struggling with hygiene? And then from there, we start to formulate a plan of how to help them grow. I had an office leader just last week. She said, you know what, where we're really struggling is crowns and dentures. So what we did is we actually created a campaign with a 20% off voucher, and we selected in the filters only patients who had been treatment planned without having a crown or a denture completed. And so this is an example of one of those. Within the first few days generated over $8,000 for a practice. But it's the benefit of this is it's actually going in and saying to your active patient base, hey, we have ways to care for you. We have services available. And this one extends, Sam, beyond the filters. This is the entire patient database. I would challenge the idea that we don't have to spam our groups. Like, we don't have to spam our patient databases, right? Send out one every season if you want to. But oftentimes those very loyal patients who are coming in for active recare don't have a ton of problems in their mouth, right? Like they're loyal patients that take care of their mouth. However, they are very well aware of other people in their life or family or friends that need to have ortho, or that are looking to do an implant. And so they become the brand loyal customer that takes these messages on to someone else. Mom may be coming in, but her son isn't, and she sees something for orthodontics, $500 off of an orthodontic treatment. And then she's able to call and say to her husband, hey, we were looking at an orthodontist. We could go right here where I already go for care. So it's about creating elements for engagement that really feel very interactive and geared towards just increasing that response from the patient, and sending them out, like I said, every quarter or something like that is not over the top, but still creates a lot of revenue for the practice. Oops.
Bill, I think it's going backwards here.
Okay.
Oh, here we go.
So yeah, go if you want to go back to that last one.
Yep, we were gonna go.
So I also wanted to share from a DSO perspective, if you have other practices within your group and you're looking to kind of expand, this is one example where we included 3 different practices in one email to say, if you've moved, we still have practices that might be a good fit for you. So create ways to engage even with a larger base. If one practice that you have in your DSO is full, but you have another one within maybe like a 15-20 mile radius, it's a huge win to be able to offer more than one location and really create custom campaigns that are exactly what you're looking for.
Thanks for sharing that, Cassie. The fact that you got, well, the way you use this, first of all, is very strategic. So thank you for sharing how you actually improve your patient database, especially with referrals, right? You don't have to actually pay for referrals. You're just getting kind of free patient acquisition at that point. So interesting how you're leveraging that. And it's great to hear how much success you've had with that. So thank you for sharing, and even sharing your actual artwork here.
You're welcome.
So to kind of wrap everything up before we get to questions, as far as best practices, one, really modify that morning huddle, leverage some sort of checklist that's personal, proactive, so you get ahead of your schedule for the day, reach out to those who still haven't confirmed yet, so maybe we can replace that. They're missing emails and texts. This is why it's important. We have that new patient in here. Make sure we introduce everybody. So kind of making sure we have that personal touch in-house and leveraging technology to use that. Secondly, extending that personal touch outside of the office. So being able to express that oral care, right? Whether it's treatment plans or even coming in for that recall or recare, making sure that we're being authentic about it and doing what's best for the patient. And then ultimately, making sure that we're keeping those personal touch points. You still haven't scheduled this. Let me send them something. So really making sure that we're getting ahead, really touching every single person that we can, every patient that we can, and really leading to true patient conversion, right? The patient scheduled, but how do we know they're coming in? You know what, that new patients come in, how do we get them back in again? And how do we retain all of our current patients and even build upon that with things like referrals? So really tying everything together, and I appreciate you sharing that.
So and I think, and Sam, I think that ultimately, the piece that I want to stress that really was the goal of what I want to share within this webinar is authenticity, and being authentic is the new theme after COVID. Our cultures are requiring that shift because people are hypersensitive and they're looking to be met in a way that is meeting their needs right where they are, instead of us asking them to fall into our standards, right? So practices really ultimately will start to die if that phone call looks like, well, we need you to do this and we can only see you on this date and we need you to call in. That's not how it works anymore. It's about the convenience and the authenticity that starts to fuel growth. And if you're not listening to your calls and you're not listening to your front desk, but you're spending time investing in other things, it's a huge miss. And I'm a strong proponent in, yes, utilize many avenues for marketing, but when you start with the patient communication as your very first central focus, a lot of things naturally follow because you build a loyal base of people who recognize that you're going to speak to them the same way every time. And we're all hypersensitive to that, right? If you have one person that takes your order at Chick-fil-A that's super kind and bubbly, but then the person that delivers your order at Chick-fil-A is not and they're angry, you wouldn't go back. But the reason why you go to that restaurant is it's consistently the same experience every time you go, and every person says my pleasure and loves caring for you. We're saying in dentistry, the same is true. So one of those things that you pulled up on the screen here that for me is a takeaway that I challenge you to implement and just see it work is the request appointment widget. We started adding them to each of our websites. Not everybody does it, but I highly recommend you do, because there are plenty of numbers in marketing that show conversion rate. And we looked really good on paper as far as our AdWord campaigns were going, but our new patient numbers weren't showing it. And your teams find the greatest disconnect when they have to go from one space to another to respond to a new patient. And by that, I mean, I'll give you an example. I had an office that I didn't know why they were not scheduling new patients, only to find out that only one team member had the email access to where the appointment requests were coming into from online. She had been out the last 3 days. What we're saying is implement the widget. Those request appointments go into RevenueWell, and now everyone who has a login at your front desk is actively responding to the patient. And the secret piece of that is when they respond to the patient, offer a like day and like time, even if the one they've requested isn't accessible. So oftentimes I have team members, they'll be like, we don't like this tool because we don't have Tuesday at 4 that the patient requested. Well, guess what? You don't have this Tuesday, but you have next. So go ahead and offer that and show the patient that you know the days of the week that they're normally accessible, and you'll be shocked to see how that starts to convert that patient into physically being into the chair. And you now have a follow-up list. How many people in marketing right now don't have that follow-up list of who was communicated with? You can see it in RevenueWell that the team has followed up or not followed up and go back to it again. And then also for those offices that want to go a step above and beyond, they can do actual scheduling through RevenueWell, which for me is fantastic for the offices that want someone to have the ease of scheduling without requesting an appointment.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that, Cassie.
Sure.
An interesting story about, not having someone reply for a couple of days. I wasn't aware of that. So
Yeah.
Interesting takeaway. And it's great that now there's another system in place for your team to be able to accomplish what we need and address patients right away for true conversion. So thank you for sharing all of that. So I guess
And
we can go ahead.
how often do you actively get to audit what's being said to your new patients? I love the fact that office leaders can go into RevenueWell and physically audit the reply that was sent to that new patient to help the team with scripting to know how to better respond. That's where the conversion happens, is when we say, you know what, we missed it on scripting. This is what we're supposed to say. So let's go back and do that.
Yeah, great takeaways. Thank you so much, Cassie, for all of the best practices today, sharing everything that you do, your scripts, your campaigns, the whole nine. So, in short, Cassie evidently uses RevenueWell, not just for the communications we talked about today and custom campaigns. She's leveraging paperless forms, leveraging things like direct scheduling, and even our phone solution as well to improve those scripts and analyze those phone calls. So we appreciate you and everything that you do, Cassie. And I guess we'll go ahead and take it away with questions. So I'll hand it off to you, Bill.
Thanks, Sam, and thank you, Cassie. That was some great content. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to stop our screen share so we can actually, there we go, can see everybody now. But yeah, good stuff. I've got a bunch of questions here. I've been running through them quickly. This one was, it probably came through about 6 or 7 times in different forms, but it was all wrapped around marketing budget. So question marks around how much should it be? And if we're a startup, what should it look like? And if I'm a de novo. So I'll let Cassie answer that. And it's pretty much an open question because I'm sure it varies, but go ahead, Cassie.
Yeah, I mean, in a general practice setting, not just DSO, we know the average is between 5 to 7% of the gross production. But what I would challenge is, I think too often we just spend marketing dollars to spend marketing dollars. And so spending a smaller amount in a variety of ways can have large impact. So, we leverage things like Yelp and AdWords and Facebook and Instagram and all of those with consistent messaging. But the amazing piece of that for me is even in leveraging our existing patient database, we mimic things like our spring special into all of those other forms of communication. So even if they're searching for the office, it pulls up on their Google My Business that we're offering these specials. So there's so much you can do organically. I mean, in my dream scenario, I like to see about half the patients come from organic searches and half come from an internal referral. That's not always realistic, right? Because we have to grow a base to begin with. But I would argue that that internal referral is so much more valuable than we take credit for or recognize, because we're so busy trying to leverage all of these external things that are coming at us. Everyone wants to market to us and give us a new idea of what to do. And sometimes I believe that the best marketers for your business is your team, because the more they know the culture that you're all about caring for patients, the more they're standing in the checkout line at the store or seeing someone at a movie theater and just bragging about where they work. That's the culture that we want to create. We want to create a space where people really wake up every day excited to love and serve people. And out of that births a very different concept on marketing, right? Because we still need AdWords and we still need things that grow our business, but it's a consistent messaging that no matter where the patient hears about it, because they say what, you need to hear something 5 times before it settles in as a potential choice for the brand that you're going to go with. Well, if you think about that, if they saw you on Facebook, they searched best dentist in the area, you popped up on AdWords, and now they're out in public and they're asking a friend and the friend recommends you. All of those are working together in that continuum of marketing efforts to bring them in to see you. And for me, the point at which they convert is when they physically come in and sit in the chair. The conversion is not just the marketing piece of running a number. It's when they're actually there and present with you. So again, very open-ended question, Bill, but I think it's a valuable one to tackle. So
Yeah, it's certainly a tough one to answer. You could do a couple of webinars just around that one single question, but it had to be about seven questions that varied around marketing budget. So quite a few people are interested in what that looks like. A couple of other things here. This one's a little bit open-ended too. Was just simply, what is the most effective patient platform? So I don't know exactly what that is or what they mean, but maybe Cassie, you could talk a little bit to that.
Yeah, so my first thought was, okay, RevenueWell is the platform that I would recommend, but I would go bigger than that. I would say the most effective platform is creating a communication setup for your team, where you literally sit down with your doctors and you make determinations around what you want to say to your patients, that's automated, that mimics what you would say if they were physically there within the practice. It's a huge miss in marketing. A lot of people hire someone externally to do their marketing that know nothing about the practice, and it's completely disconnected and it feels fake and it doesn't feel like it's real, and all those things are invested in and they don't result in any kind of patient retention. Where the value happens is when, as a team, you define your mission and what it is you want to accomplish, and you start to engage with everybody inside the practice to say, what do we want to say? Like, what's the message we want to say? And then leveraging RevenueWell to create that content so that it's actually in there. Like, I would far rather pay for a copywriter to help me write content that goes inside of RevenueWell than I would pay for someone externally to market me and come up with great ideas. Because some of your very best ideas are sitting right inside the practice with people that have been loving and serving patients for years.
Great answer. Have another one for you. This one, actually, I think Sam can answer too, because it'll be really interesting to get your perspective on this as you work with a lot of different sized groups, small, large, and probably solos as well. But as far as biggest marketing trend post-COVID, maybe I'll let Sam answer this first, and then Cassie, you can talk a little bit about how you pivoted marketing-wise. What are you seeing now, Sam, with your customers that is different than you saw maybe pre-COVID, and then even, I guess we are post-COVID, or kind of in the middle of COVID still?
Yeah, and it's awkward in between, I guess, state, right? So that's a great question. I'd say what I've seen, pre-COVID, there wasn't as much competition, I'd say, in the DSO space, it seems, or with practices in general. So there wasn't much of a push to advanced technology, not so soon, right? Kind of at a, not necessarily a glacial pace, but we'll get there. And once COVID hit, there was this quick sort of pivot. We need to do everything online. We need to have bill pay. We need to have online forms. We need to make it as simple as possible for our office managers and our patients, and just implementing as much technology as possible, but at the same time, not trying to overwhelm staff, right? So really just transitioning, whether it was faster or slow, there was huge transitions taking place throughout 2020. And this year, it seems like there's an even greater focus to just streamline that a bit more. I hate using that word because it's so generic, but really just kind of clean up that mess in house. Really, how much can we, bring those patients in, and how clean can it be, and how can we keep them coming back? Because with the technology shifts, this is becoming an increasingly competitive market. So if I'm looking around for a practice locally, my dentist better be on top. If not, I'll find somebody else who has great reviews and is nearby, right? So really making sure that that online presence is there, and that we do have that convenience factor for patients, but still at the same time, make sure that you're also staying competitive in the market.
Yeah, I would tag team with that. I mean, how many people did not order fast food via DoorDash or some other method before COVID, right? Like, we all have that expectancy now, like, I'm going to place an order on my phone and it's going to come to me. Before, we would physically have to go out, go sit somewhere, or go pick it up. And so I think what we're seeing is, this culture is not just millennials anymore. It's really our population is saying, make it accessible to me. Like, I require that because that's where everybody else is going in the industry. So if we're not willing to rise to that, if we're not willing to be accommodating and authentic in accommodating, right? Because if they sense and feel in any way whatsoever that we are contacting them to fill our schedule, they're gone, because they're demanding that authenticity. So we have to make it feel like it's centered around their health and their patient care, and we have to make it feel accessible in terms of, like, you know what, we'll accommodate you. Offices that are staying open until 3:30 in the afternoon are no more, right? Because practices need to stay open to accommodate patients at a time that works for them. It's no longer about what works for us. And I think we're going to keep seeing that paradigm shift more and more the longer we go.
Yeah, I think that's great points. I mean, if anything, COVID has really forced the industry to do is treat patients less like patients and more like customers.
Correct.
And what I mean by that is, we used to be sit and wait for half an hour to see the doc or see the hygienist, and of course now with COVID you can't wait at all. So now it's immediately, or we'll text you when we're ready to see you. So that's kind of sped things up, and that's through technology, right? And to your point about convenience, right? Greater hours, longer hours, more days open, possibly weekends. And I think that's where DSOs really can excel too, because they can do things like that where maybe some of the smaller practices aren't able to. So here's another one wrapped around creating influencers within your marketing approach. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I really believe in creating a culture crew or an ambassador within your practice. If you want a gold nugget around something that works, write down culture crew and look to that one really fun, engaging person within the practice. Get them engaged with your office leader and start to talk to them about content for social media, ways to engage with the team around birthdays, and make it fun. But give somebody within your practice the authority to influence your culture. You will be amazed at what that does, because I think sometimes in marketing we decide this is what the brand looks like and this is the brand image and you all go do this. And you know what? Nobody's listening to us. Like, it's sitting on a piece of paper in a book somewhere and a binder of how to set brand standards. What the practice needs is something that's applicable and feels like it's connected to them. That culture crew accomplishes so much more than just building morale within the team. They literally are taking the mission and values of what you do and reporting back to you on what they see and what they're engaging with and ideas to make it better. I think the more we enhance the environment that our teams work in, to where they understand that we're not just about making money, that we're about providing care for patients, the more everybody gets excited to wake up in the morning and come to work. But it takes that one challenger, that one person that's going to lead the charge for you. And the sooner you create that role within your practice, and maybe you incentivize them in some way, that if they meet their goal every month of, something within the practice, that they get something as a result. I would challenge you that that person becomes an integral piece in actually building brand ambassadors right within your practice versus looking for people externally just to find you on a whim from a Google search. So build your strength within first, and from there it starts to fuel growth.
Excellent. So let's talk a little bit about consistency. This came up a couple of times too. So, tools and programs to use to create consistency. And maybe I'll take this question a couple steps further. When you're doing recare for a patient, so what's the process look like for you, Cassie? Like, when do you reach out? So we've got the appointment already scheduled. So what does it look like after that? Is it a week before, 2 weeks before, and then after that appointment? Talk a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, so we give them a reminder at 14 days after the appointment has been scheduled, just to say, hey, it's coming up. We want to make sure you're good with that appointment time. Let us know if you'd like to change it. And then 48 hours prior, we ask them to confirm their appointment. I love the way that we do our confirmations, because we say to the patient, we will have to have your appointment confirmed 24 hours prior, or we will need to release that time for another patient. Our volume is higher in terms of scheduling, and we want to be honoring of your schedule and also honoring of our docs and team. And so if it's phrased in a way where, again, it doesn't sound like they're a number, or like, listen, we have a schedule to keep, and if you can't be here, like, go away. Like, so it just says, like, we value you, but we also need you to value this time because it was reserved for you. We see such a higher retention in patients coming in and honoring that schedule, or notifying us when they can't make it. So it's a consistent measure every single day with that confirmation process that keeps patients in the chair. And if you think your office is doing it, but you're not certain, you better be 100% certain that they are. Because like I mentioned earlier, Bill, it's a coveted hour every day. That is like the holy hour. Did you do your confirmations today and prepare for the next day? And if they know that, and they feel an intense responsibility over protecting their team and the team schedule, as well as honoring the patient, like, everybody's on board. Everybody wants to be a part of that. And I really believe the more we change and shift our language from a leadership perspective to be about the patient engagement side of it and honoring our team, it's like everybody gets to win. And I think sometimes we negate the fact that if we're too hardcore with certain aspects of our language, it's not only a turnoff for patients, but it really is a turnoff for someone to want to continue working for us. So it's a cultural shift.
So that sounds. That's certainly important, Cassie. Is that pretty much? Would you say that's standard protocol? Maybe Sam, you could talk a little bit about that. Does that seem pretty much in line with what other practices are doing as far as when they contact the patient prior to the appointment, or what do you say?
I'd say more or less very, very similar. The policy piece may vary, right? The 24 hours in advance piece, but generally speaking, the cadence more or less is very similar. Some people do, that extra reminder ahead of time through a custom campaign, but really no different. The same day reminder is a huge one, just because it locks into their Google Calendar or iOS, whatever they're using, and going ahead with those confirmations from there, and also leveraging that task list too.
Excellent.
And Bill, we also attach the wellness form So the COVID screening to that 14-day reminder, and then again at 48 hours, just so they know that we're asking them to do that before they come in the door. And it really has alleviated a lot of concern of whether or not we even are screening patients, because they have comfort in knowing they can quickly complete that link via their, or go to that link via their text and do the form ahead of their visit. So it's just a great consistent measure.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to know that these are best practices, and we've got a couple of minutes left here. I think we about 2 minutes left. So what I wanted to do is just make sure everybody had a chance to take a look at this slide here, and we have Sam and Cassie's email addresses and mine as well. If you want to reach out to us, if you have any other questions, we didn't get to all the questions because we've had probably close to 30 questions, which is great. So what we'll make sure we do via email is follow up with everybody. There are some great questions around when do you add a full-time marketing person, social media marketing suggestions. So we'll make sure we get back to you on all those. And then what you'll also do is you'll have access to a recording of this. And again, we'll have the email address information in there in case you need to reach out to anybody. Any last words, Sam or Cassie, before we let everybody go?
No, I was just going to add that from a social media perspective, we didn't answer that question, but I think it's a fun endpoint for those that are still on the call. There is a great way to connect your Facebook right into RevenueWell and take that culture crew to the next step by having them start to post fun things happening within the practice and giving them some control over social media that feels more relational instead of stale dental content. And so just anything to start changing and shifting things within your practice can be great.
Excellent. Sam, I'll let you end this.
Yeah, I thank you, Cassie, and thank you, Bill, for setting this up and joining us today. A lot of golden nuggets in there, Cassie. Thank you for sharing all of that information, and I appreciate everybody hopping on today. We're excited to have you a part of this and answer any additional questions that you have. So, thank you.
Yeah, thanks everybody, and
Thanks, Bill.
yep, thank you, Cassie. And thanks everybody for attending. Like I said, you want to watch the recording, we'll have it up on groupdentistrynow.com within the day. So stay tuned for that. And until next time, I'm Bill Neumann with Group Dentistry Now, and this is the DSO Study Club. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Bill.